In the glow of shared evenings, Mara Ellis had always found solace in the unbreakable circle of her friends, where laughter wove through the air like an invisible thread binding them all. Noah, the charismatic heart of their pack, spun tales that kept the past alive and secrets buried deep, while Lena's quiet wisdom anchored the quieter moments. But beneath the warmth of routine gatherings simmered an unspoken fracture, a betrayal waiting to unravel the fragile peace Mara clung to so desperately. Tonight, as the apartment pulsed with the easy cadence of routine, laughter bubbling from the kitchen like steam from a simmering pot, plates rattling in sync with Noah's animated gestures. Mara perched on the sagging couch, her fingers idly smoothing the threads of a faded cushion, eyes scanning the room like a sentinel. Noah held court by the stove, his voice a hearty anchor, retelling that old road trip tale with flourishes that drew nods and grins from the others. Lena propped against the counter, her laughter light and genuine, while Amir lingered in the shadows with his beer, his subtle smirks adding quiet weight to the chorus. It was meant to be home, that coastal whisper sneaking through the window, laced with the tang of the sea. But Mara's limbs felt weighted, fatigue seeping into her core like fog off the water, a bone-deep weariness from the week's grind, from propping up the fragile balance. She met Noah's glance with a practiced smile, echoed Lena's query about her day with a murmured, "Fine," the word dissolving into the humid air. Yet beneath it, her silence coiled tighter, not a solo retreat, but a shared strain, threading unease through the group's easy flow. They drifted to the living room, plates teetering on laps, the coffee table a battlefield of glasses and crumpled wrappers. Noah dropped beside her, his shoulder grazing hers in that familiar, grounding way. "Those dunes, remember?" he boomed, eyes alight, reeling them back into the collective memory. Lena's laugh rang out. Amir dipped his head in agreement, and Mara chimed in with a nod. Her response clipped, a reflex now laced with restraint. The fatigue sharpened into anxiety, a prickling awareness that her quiet nods weren't bridging gaps anymore. They were walls, subtly widening the spaces between words. She observed it all, the observer woven into the fabric, yet pulling at its seams. How Noah's stories now skimmed past her edges, Lena's warmth glancing off without probing, Amir's silences mirroring her own, but never colliding. The empty table in the corner loomed, stark amid the clutter, a symbol of what hung unspoken, a placeholder for the trust that was fraying, invisible threads snapping under the weight of her held-back truths. No one named the undercurrent, the secret she'd whispered to Noah moons ago, now a specter haunting the air they all breathed. Her heart stuttered, anxiety flaring like heat from the stove. Could this silence bind them? Or was it already unraveling the ties that made them whole? The evening pressed on, seamless on the surface, stories tumbling forward without fracture. But Mara felt the shift. Her agreements, once connective, had morphed into self-imposed barriers, curbing the flow. Trust hummed with faint cracks, the topic unraised, hovering just out of reach. Laughter crested again, but it rang hollow to her ears. Silence, once a gentle shield, now felt like the first fracture in the foundation. The distance stretched, inch by inch, as the night deepened. A few days later, Mara pushed open the door to the apartment, the familiar creak slicing through the evening hush. The coastal fog clung to her coat, carrying the salt tang of the city outside. But inside, everything felt too still. She kicked off her shoes, letting the quiet settle over her like an old blanket, comforting, unyielding. For years, this had been her anchor, the unspoken pact with Noah, Lena, Amir. Silence kept the edges smooth, the group intact. She hung her keys on the hook, exhaling the day's weight, ready to sink into the routine. Then she saw it. In the dim hallway light, the mirror above the console table stared back fractured. Shards glinted like scattered teeth. The frame tilted crookedly against the wall. She froze, heart stuttering. Had it always been like this? No. Last week it reflected her whole, uncracked. Now, her face multiplied in the breaks. Wary eyes in one sliver, tight lips in another. She reached out, fingers hovering over a jagged edge, afraid to touch. The calm cracked first, a slow seep of unease. Memories flooded in, unbidden. That night 2 years ago, Noah's hand on her shoulder after the party, his voice low. "You don't have to say anything. I've got you." She'd swallowed the hurt then, his casual dismissal of her fears about the group, the way he'd twisted her words later. Silence had felt like loyalty, a shield wrapping her vulnerability. Another flash. The beach walk with Lena, words bubbling up about Noah's jealousy. But Mara bit them back. "It's fine," she'd lied. The quiet preserving their circle. Even Amir's quiet glances, sensing the undercurrents, met her nod of nothing's wrong. But now, standing there, the fragments mocked her. What if silence wasn't protection? What if it was the cage? Her pulse quickened, breath shallowing into anxiety's grip. Noah's betrayal lingered unspoken in her chest. The way he'd leaked her confession, her private ache about the group's fractures, to the others. "Just keeping it real," he'd texted later, casual as fog. Distant now, that easy trust with him frayed like the mirror's edges. She could feel the pull, stay mute, hold the peace, or let the voice out and watch it shatter everything. Her reflection wavered, pieces not aligning. Could truth protect her, or would it just multiply the breaks? The apartment air thickened, heavy with the unsaid. That tension carried into the next evening, when the dim light of the coastal apartment hung like a veil, casting long shadows over the cluttered coffee table, strewn with half-empty wine glasses and forgotten takeout boxes. Mara sat cross-legged on the worn couch, her fingers tracing the edge of her phone, a silent habit born from years of unspoken burdens. Noah lounged across from her, his charismatic grin flashing as he recounted some group inside joke, the air thick with the easy rhythm of their shared history. Lena, ever the anchor, sipped her drink quietly beside Mara, while Amir observed from the armchair, his eyes flicking between them like a man piecing together a puzzle. Laughter rippled through the room as Noah leaned forward, animated. "Remember that time we all crashed at the beach house? Mara had this epic meltdown. Wait, no, confession." His voice dipped, playful but edged, as if testing waters. The room stilled. Mara's heart stuttered. She had told him that night, alone in the kitchen, her voice trembling into his phone as an unsent voice memo, words too raw to release, a secret about her crumbling family ties, the guilt she carried like a stone. She said she felt like the whole friendship was holding her back, like we were all just anchors dragging her down. Noah chuckled, oblivious or cruel, waving it off. But hey, that's Mara, always the deep thinker. Shock hit Mara like cold surf, freezing her in place. Her breath caught, the world narrowing to the pulse in her ears. The unsent memo, her private unraveling, recorded in a moment of vulnerability, never meant for anyone but the void, now spilled out, casual as confetti. Friends shifted uncomfortably, eyes darting. A murmur from the corner, a hesitant sip from Lena. Amir's jaw tightened, his quiet gaze locking on Noah. Mara's hands clenched, knuckles whitening around her phone. The shock cracked, fury seeping in like tide water. Hot, insistent. How dare he? The man she'd trusted with her fractures. The one who'd sworn silence was their pact. Her throat burned, words clawing up, but the room's tension pinned her, external and suffocating. The group's fragile harmony shattering under the weight. Lena reached for her arm, whispering, "Mara." But the touch only fueled the rage building in her chest, a simmer turning to boil. Noah blinked, grin faltering. "What?" It was funny. The air hung heavy. Unspoken accusations, fracturing the space. Could any of this be salvaged now? When the silence they'd all cherished had twisted into the sharpest blade. The fallout lingered into the quiet hours that followed. As the apartment hummed with the low drone of the city outside, waves crashing faintly against the coastal dusk. Mara slumped on the edge of the couch, her fingers tracing the frayed seam of a throw pillow, eyes fixed on the floor, where shadows pooled like unspoken regrets. Exhaustion clung to her, a bone-deep weariness from holding the weight of Noah's betrayal inside, letting it gnaw without release. Lena sat across from her, legs crossed, the lamplight casting soft angles on her face, patient, but edged with the quiet insistence Mara both craved and dreaded. "Tell me," Lena said, voice steady, cutting through the heavy air. "All of it. No more swallowing it down." Mara's breath hitched. She wanted to curl into the silence, let it wrap around her like an old blanket, preserving the fragile peace of their group. But the words tumbled out anyway, raw and halting. "Noah, he took what I told him in confidence. That night after the party, when I was falling apart about my family, he twisted it, shared it with everyone, like it was his story to tell, laughed it off as keeping things real. Now they're all looking at me sideways, and I can't fight it. If I stay quiet, maybe it'll fade." Lena leaned forward, her eyes narrowing, not in anger, but in that fierce compassion that always made Mara feel seen. "Quiet? Mara, that's what got us here. You're not a vault for his poison. You've been carrying this alone, and it's eating you alive." She paused, the silence stretching like a held breath, thick with the tension of what Mara wouldn't say. Lena's gaze flicked to the coffee table, where Mara's phone lay dormant, screen dark. "Remember that voice memo you recorded last week? The one you never sent? Pouring out how tired you are of pretending?" Mara followed her gaze, the memory surfacing unbidden. The app open in the dim light of her bedroom, her voice trembling as she spoke truths she'd never voiced aloud. She hadn't hit send. It sat there, unsent, a ghost of potential. Her chest tightened, the fatigue sharpening into something sharper, a spark of resolve flickering beneath the haze. "But if I speak up," Mara whispered, "it all shatters. The group, us, everything we've built on loyalty. Can I really keep the peace without dragging it all into the light?" Lena reached out, her hand warm on Mara's knee. "Peace built on lies isn't peace. It's a cage. And you're not alone in this. What if we don't just talk? What if we gather what others have seen? Amir, maybe others. They've caught glimpses of Noah's games, the way he controls the stories, testimonies, real ones. Not to destroy, but to hold the truth up. Let it breathe. You don't have to swallow it anymore. We carry it together." The words hung, pulling Mara from the slump of exhaustion toward a tentative stand. Her hand hovered over the phone, thumb brushing the screen, as if to finally send that memo. Silence had been her shield, but now it felt like chains. The distance to Noah yawned wider in her mind, a necessary rift, while Lena's presence anchored her, an ally in the unraveling. Could they rebuild without breaking everything? The question lingered, unanswered, as resolve settled in Mara's veins like the incoming tide. Emboldened by that conversation, the next afternoon brought Mara and Lena to Amir's side. As the dim light of Lena's apartment filtered through half-drawn blinds, casting long shadows across the cluttered coffee table, Mara sat on the edge of the couch, her fingers twisting the hem of her sweater, the fabric worn thin from too many anxious pulls. Across from her, Amir leaned forward, elbows on knees, his usual quiet demeanor cracked open like a door left ajar. "I've seen it before," Amir said, his voice low, steady, like he was reciting from a journal he'd kept hidden. Not the big blow-ups, but the small ones. The way Noah would twist a story just enough. "Remember that night at the pier? You shared that worry about your job, Mara. The one about feeling stuck. He laughed it off in front of us all. But later, when you weren't there, he spun it like you were complaining, ungrateful, made us nod along, like it was funny. I didn't call it out then. Thought it was nothing." Mara's breath caught, a sharp intake that echoed in the stillness. Her mind raced, distrust flaring hot in her chest. If Amir had seen it, why stay silent? Why let the group knit tighter around Noah's version of truth? The confession Noah had leaked, her private fear about the abortion she'd never told anyone else. It all felt like threads unraveling now. Trusting this, voicing it, could snap the whole fabric. The friends they'd built over years, game nights, late drives along the coast, would fray into accusations, isolation. She glanced at her phone on the table, the screen dark, hiding that unsent voice memo she'd recorded last night. Words she'd whispered to herself. "It hurts, and I can't keep pretending. Never sent, never heard. But I see it now," Amir pressed, his eyes meeting hers, unflinching. "Your feelings aren't imagined. That time in the kitchen, when he cornered you about missing the hike, he said it casual, but his tone, it was control, Mara. Like your choices were his to question. I should have said something sooner." Her throat tightened, the distrust coiling like smoke. But something shifted. His words landed not as judgment, but anchor, real, unpolished. Not like Noah's charisma, all shine and no substance. Mara exhaled, slow, the anger simmering beneath her ribs, easing into a fragile warmth. Cautious faith, tentative as a first step on cracked ice. If Amir had witnessed the manipulations, piecing them like quiet evidence, maybe her own perceptions weren't the lies she'd told herself. Maybe the pain she'd buried wasn't hers to carry alone. She reached for her phone, thumb hovering over the voice memo app. The unsent recording sat there, a ghost of what she might finally release. But the question lingered, heavy in the air between them. Could she trust this perception, this break from silence, without everything shattering? Amir waited, the room holding its breath. That resolve deepened as they expanded the circle, leading to the cafe where the hum of afternoon stragglers filled the air. But their corner table sat empty, save for 3 mismatched mugs and a scattering of napkins. Mara traced the edge of the wooden surface with her fingertip, the void mirroring the hollow in her chest. Doubt gnawed at her. Would these words from old friends shatter the fragile group, or just echo into nothing? Lena squeezed her knee under the table, a silent anchor. "We're here for the truth," she whispered, "not to burn it all down." Amir arrived first, sliding into the seat across from them, his eyes shadowed like someone who'd carried secrets too long. "I didn't want to say anything before," he started, voice low, folding his hands on the empty expanse. But that night at the beach house, Noah pulled me aside after you left, Mara. Told me your confession about the breakup was just drama, that I shouldn't let it change how we all stuck together. He made it sound like loyalty meant burying it. Mara's throat tightened. She wanted to nod, to let the silence swallow it again, the old habit, the lie that peace came from swallowing shards. But Lena's gaze pinned her. "What else?" Mara asked, her voice cracking like thin ice. Internal storm raged. Speak and risk the fracture, or stay mute and let the poison fester. Two more friends joined, Sarah and Jamal, settling around the barren table, the absence of Noah's chair a glaring void. Sarah leaned in, her words tumbling out like a confession, long rehearsed. "Remember the group chat last winter? Noah screenshotted your private message to him about feeling trapped in the friendship dynamic. Shared it with us, but edited out the part where you said you trusted him. See? She's overreacting," he said. I laughed it off then, but it twisted everything. Jamal nodded, rubbing his jaw. "And that time at Lena's apartment, he cornered me in the kitchen, swearing me to silence about how he'd handled your doubts. Said if I breathed a word, it'd destroy the group." His eyes, they weren't protective. They were controlling. The details piled like evidence on the empty table, each one a chisel against Mara's doubt. She felt the shift, not a weapon in her hands, but a key unlocking the cage of her silence. Relief bloomed, warm and tentative, as their nods turned to quiet approval. "It's not just me," she murmured, meeting Lena's steady eyes, then Amir's. The bond thickened, a new thread weaving through the cracks, while Noah's shadow stretched longer, colder. But as the cafe lights dimmed outside, Mara wondered, would this truth rebuild, or just leave more empty spaces? Armed with these accounts, the tension built toward the inevitable gathering, as the dim light of the coastal apartment hung like fog over the dining room, casting long shadows across the empty table. Mara stood in the kitchen doorway, her fingers twisting the hem of her sweater, heart pounding a frantic rhythm against her ribs. The group was arriving. Noah first, with his easy smile that never quite reached his eyes anymore, clapping Amir on the back as if nothing had fractured. Lena slipped in behind them, her gaze locking onto Mara's with a subtle nod, a silent anchor in the swelling tide of anxiety. Plates clattered as they set the table, the empty space at its center mirroring the void Mara felt inside. She wanted to let the night slide by, laughter filling the cracks, preserving this fragile illusion of us. But the words she'd rehearsed with Lena burned in her throat, the testimonies from Amir's quiet recounting. "I saw him twist your words, Mara, like they were his to own." And Lena's firm echo, "Silence isn't loyalty, it's surrender." Delaying now would erase the moment, leave the truth buried under small talk and wine. Noah laughed at something trivial, his charisma pulling the room toward him. But Mara watched him like a storm on the horizon, tension coiling tighter in her chest. What if she spoke and it all shattered? What if she didn't, and the silence swallowed her whole again, ruining everything she'd fought to hold? Lena brushed past, squeezing Mara's arm. Support without words, a bridge to Amir's steady presence across the table. The anxiety gnawed, sharp and insistent, but Mara breathed it down, focusing on the script in her mind. The betrayal laid bare, the boundaries she'd claim. The empty table waited, plates now filling its surface, but the space beneath hummed with unspoken weight. Honesty loomed, inevitable, as forks scraped and voices rose, her resolve sharpening like a blade in the quiet. The moment arrived as the dim light of the coastal apartment hung heavy, casting long shadows across the empty table at the center of the room. Mara sat rigid among the remnants of their once tight circle. No laughter now, just the weight of unspoken fractures. Noah lounged against the wall, arms crossed, his charismatic mask cracking at the edges. Lena and Amir flanked Mara, their presence a quiet anchor, eyes steady. Her hands trembled under the table, knuckles white. Fear coiled in her chest like a vice. Voicing this would shatter everything, leave her exposed, alone. But silence, it had already betrayed her. Noah's leak of her confession, that raw secret about the abuse she'd whispered only to him, had rippled through texts and whispers, turning her vulnerability into group gossip. No more. Mara rose slowly, the chair scraping like a held breath. The room froze. "Noah," she said, voice a thin thread at first, laced with tremor. "You promised. It's safe with me, you said. But you told them. All of them." She pulled out her phone, thumb hovering. Fear clawed higher. What if this ended it all? But resolve flickered, hardening her spine. She hit play on the voice memo, her own words from months ago spilling out. "I can't keep pretending it's fine. He hurt me, Noah, deep." Then Lena's testimony, recorded last night. "I saw it in her eyes after that party. Bruised, not just skin." Noah knew and said nothing to help. Amir's followed, low and measured. "He twisted it, Mara. Used your trust like a weapon to keep us all in line." Noah shifted, eyes darting to the broken mirror on the wall. Shards from last week's careless slam, reflecting his face in jagged pieces, multiplied and distorted. He avoided it, jaw tight. "Mara, come on. It wasn't like that. I was protecting the group." "Protecting?" Her voice sharpened, fear yielding to fire. The group leaned in, breaths held, tension thick as fog. "You chose to expose me. Now choose. Own it or walk. No more half-truths. I'm done carrying this alone." He stepped back, hands up, distance blooming between them like a chasm. Lena squeezed Mara's arm. Amir nodded, solid, unmoving. The air hummed with the unsaid. Could any thread of this bind them now? Or would truth sever it clean? Silence lingered, but not hers. Not anymore. In the quiet hours after Noah's departure, the dim light from the kitchen window cast long shadows across the empty table, its surface bare, except for 2 half-empty mugs of cooling tea. Mara slumped in her chair, eyelids heavy, the weight of the confrontation still pressing on her chest like an unlifted fog. Her voice came out ragged, barely above a whisper. "I keep thinking it's my job to fix this, Lena, to smooth it over, make sure no one walks away feeling broken." Lena leaned forward, her fingers tracing the edge of her mug, eyes steady on Mara's face. The air between them hummed with the quiet aftermath. No laughter from the group, no Noah's easy charisma filling the room. Just this void, stark and unignorable. Fix it how? By swallowing it again? That's what got us here. Mara's shoulders sagged deeper, exhaustion pulling at her like tidewater. She stared at the empty chairs opposite, where Noah had sat just hours ago, his words slicing through the fragile peace, the betrayal replayed in fragments, her private confession twisted and shared, the group's sidelong glances turning to pity. "I don't want to go back to that silence. It's like carrying a stone in my throat. But what if speaking up just makes the hole bigger? What if this emptiness swallows us whole?" Lena reached across the table, her hand warm against Mara's cold one. "It won't. Not if we name it. Boundaries, Mara. No more secrets hoarded like lifelines. You tell me when something's eating at you. First, before it festers." And Noah, distance. He doesn't get to orbit us anymore, not without earning it. The words hung there, simple and unyielding. Mara felt the fog thinning, her breath steadying as she met Lena's gaze. No more deferring, no more muting her own voice to keep the peace. The table's emptiness stared back, not a wound, but a canvas, wiped clean. She straightened slightly, a quiet resolve settling in her bones. Okay, starting now. I won't fill this space just to avoid the quiet. It's mine to hold. Ours. Lena nodded, a small smile breaking through. The room felt less hollow, the shadows softer, but the question lingered unspoken in the air between them. Could this void be reshaped into something solid? A foundation, rather than a fracture. Days later, in the reflective calm that followed, Mara sat cross-legged on her unmade bed. The late afternoon light filtering through salt-streaked windows like a hesitant confession. The apartment hummed with the distant crash of waves, but inside, the air felt thick, weighted by the words she'd swallowed for weeks. Her phone rested in her palm, screen glowing faintly, a blank canvas for the voice memo app. Fingers hovered. Actually, forget Noah. Her voice softened, turning inward, as if speaking to the mirror across the room, the one with its faint crack from last winter's storm. This is for me. I've been carrying this like it's my fault, staying quiet to keep the peace. But that peace is a lie. You betrayed me, Noah, and I let it fester because I feared the fallout. Lena's right. Amir saw it too. No more. The words flowed now, raw and unpolished, naming the hurt without apology. A simmer of anger flickered, then eased into something lighter, like exhaling after holding breath too long. She leaned back against the pillows, thumb pressing delete. The file vanished with a soft chime, the unsent memo dissolving into digital ether. No trace, no audience. Just her, in the quiet that no longer felt like hiding. The distance from Noah solidified in that moment, a boundary etched in her resolve. Lena's steady texts buzzed unanswered for now, her support a quiet anchor. But this, speaking to herself, prioritized the voice she'd muffled for too long. Trust started here, in the empty space where approval once ruled. Was it enough, this self-spoken truth? The question lingered, unanswered, as the light shifted, casting her reflection whole again.